The watch face hangs in the dark like a stubborn moon, its paint thinned at 12. Eddie Flores cups it, glove creaking on the strap, while his radio breathes sickly in his ear. The SCR-300's hiss threads under far artillery that opens and closes the sky like a slow bellows. 57. 58. He nudges the battery pack with his knee, headset biting his scalp. The net crackles, half a voice, company to platoons, password rotation at, then drowns in snow as Eddie's breath fogs the mouthpiece. 59. He tastes rain. Hedgerows stand as black walls on both sides, old earth armored with roots and barbed wire, a dark that will swallow a word unless it's thrown hard. At midnight, the old countersign dies, and every wrong syllable can get someone shot before they take a second breath. Sergeant Will Mercer slides through that dark like a man moving across a crowded room he knows by heart. One hand skims the earthen bank to keep a straight line, the other fixed near his helmet's edge, chin tucked against the cold drizzle. He stops at a foxhole sunk into the lane shoulder, two helmets netted, faces smudged by the ghost of a distant flare. "Old word until the hour," he whispers, because procedure is a rope when the world is fog. Challenge is orchard. Response is blossom. Say it. The nearer man spits it back on fear and habit. Mercer has kept men steady since the beach by keeping their mouths on the right syllables. He glances to where the lane kinks and hedges bow in, measuring gaps between posts by strides, the way the ground drains under his boots. The chain should cross the line on the air, clean and on time, or the rope snaps. The night keeps picking at Flores. The set coughs, then fades. He heels the radio casing, small percussion in a hush. The speaker flares bright, then whines and sinks into a flat, cold blank that is worse than noise. He can feel the battery sag through the strap against his spine. He rides the knob, wincing, begging a voice to hook the needle. It rises, falls, then gives him nothing. He pulls the pencil stub tucked under his watch strap and studies the damp scrap folded on his map. The new watchword and countersign blur at the edges where drizzle licked them. He can see the bones. The skin has run, one vowel bleeding into the next. The hour is a train he hears in a tunnel, and his set has died on the tracks. Mercer hears the silence as a shape. He marks off steps to the T-junction where Arnie Doss sits forward. Doss can hear a twig breathe, has lived down the sights for a week, wakes in the pause between heartbeats. Mercer wants Doss's nerves wired to doctrine, not to rumors about Germans in American jackets, swapping stolen syllables like smokes. He drew the cadence at dusk with a finger on dirt. Challenge once clear, second if unsure, third, and you escalate. On the third you move the safety and don't wait for anyone. It was meant to keep fear boxed. Hedgerows make the box smaller. Metal rattles down the lane, not artillery, not rain. It's Eddie shifting and the snared-on webbing sound of Mercer's own gear when he squats behind him. "How far did they get it?" Mercer asks, as if the net were a string over the hedges with the new word tied to it. Eddie squeezes the switch. The speaker gives him his breathing back. "Company came on, Sarge. Battery. It went." He won't say dead. Dead is for men. Mercer tightens the flashlight's hood with his thumb shaking on the switch to choke the beam and reads the damp scrap by counting letter strokes like that might sharpen them. The countersign is an everyday thing forced into strange clothes. He shapes it once in his head, once low and careful, to hear where the tongue hits. The vowel is the blade. "We're on the hour in 3, Mercer says. "We walk it." He points at a hedge gap where the lane hooks toward a dairy that smells faintly of sour milk. Private Nora Kane nests there, thin shoulders under a wet jacket, runner's strap carving her chest. She has kept her hands warm in her armpits, eyes sliding to Eddie's glowing watch whenever it swings by. She knows the cut between orchards like her own route, but fog turns maps into rumor. "Carry it up through first squad, then cut to Doss," Mercer says, wrapping the hedge wall where a fox could pass. "Fence posts, count 6 to the drainage, 2 more to the break. Don't miss the drainage." Fog gives landmarks the same face for miles. She nods because the only answer in the night is yes. She tucks the damp note under her tags, closer than that, to keep the words warm as skin. The fog is playing favorites. Tonight it eats consonants first. 10 yards away a man can seem to speak from the hedge or from inside your hood. Vowels flattened so O and A are cousins, like men with the same mouth and different eyes. Mercer knows it from the way blossom comes back stuffed with cotton. He thinks about the new countersign's vowel and how it will sound in a rounder mouth, in the Frenchman's. Lieutenant Henry Beaumont traded city shoes for boondockers, scarf tucked neat like Paris survived under his jacket. Mercer told him the word and watched him shape it, lips rounding, beat off, and promised himself he'd correct it when the radio made the change official. He has run out of radio. Beyond the bend, the road bottoms into a low puddle that never drains. In gray hours, boot soles sign it. The GI Vibram lugs with their bars and chevrons, German hobnailed coins, a small history if you stare long enough. Mercer stares and sees American edges soften in new drizzle. The hedges drip. Somewhere to the right, fields breathe steam into the lane. He rises, and the world appears to rise with him, nothing moving, everything listening. 1 and 2, then 3, he murmurs again, because repetition puts a plank under a man's feet when the ground wants to slide. Artillery blooms pale through low cloud, all light with no place, then the sky goes back to being a ceilingless gorge. Eddie waits for company to punch the hour again, for a spare voice to jump his dead battery and shove the word across on fear alone. He hears instead the set's insides, little hearts built to be humped through hedges they were not built for. He peels his watch off to make sure time still ticks. It does. He props it on his knee so the glow licks the damp note, while he begs the letters to come back into focus. The countersign reads like a fish mouth. He reads it again, and in the artillery's next long breath, he hears a syllable erased that won't come back. Kane takes the hedge cut where Mercer tapped, shoulders combing twigs, the world going green-black and close. The first post stands slick with algae. She knocks it with her knuckles to count. 1, the damp deepens under leaves. 2, the sky vanishes. 3, the ground drops a fraction. Her boot finds the drainage like a cold hand. She freezes. Stillness can be the difference between telling your name with a twig and keeping it. Drizzle tickles. 4, she tastes metal in her breath. 5, a wire whispers under her sleeve. 6, she reaches out, testing space with a palm, blind because she is. The gap should be 2 lengths past the drainage, a farmer's habit, older than this war. She measures 2. No break. Everything smells of wet earth and bruised green. The lane sits to her left as a heavier quiet. She shifts angle. She must. On the lane, Doss watches a slice of night and names it. Hedge lip, rut, puddle mirror, split stump. He counts 2. Heart kicks, the way his skin hears the wind stop. His palm knows his M1 stock better than any desk in any house he ever lived in. The rule sits in his mouth. Challenged twice if uncertain. He has practiced the new word in his head since Mercer said it, knowing he'll be the first to try it on a man who wants to go home and one who doesn't. His thumb knows the safety like it knows a cigarette. He listens for foreign metal, the cutlery note of German tins. He has taught his ears Rain's catalog. Nothing moves he can name. That can be its own kind of moving. Mercer is mid-step when the far end of the net knocks like on a door underwater. Eddie flinches, cups the speaker, mouths a call sign with half its letters. "Say again," he whispers to a set that won't take him anywhere. His responsibility collapses. No air, only legs. He looks toward the gap where Kane vanished and sees the route like a school map, drawn too light for weather. He looks up and shakes his head once, slow, shame cutting sharper than battery death. "We've got to run it," he says. Mercer nods. He already has. When everything tilts, he falls into the thing he can control. Motion. Fog blunts edges. Two men 5 yards apart are ghosts to one another. Soft sounds slide sideways. Eddie tests the new word under his breath to hear its reach. It dies a yard from his lips. He tries Beaumont's shape, rounder, Paris under strain. It comes back a question. He thinks of the note in Nora's pocket and Rain rewriting it as she moves. He sees the standing order in his head, old countersign invalid at midnight, and watches the second hand lift its fin toward the mark. Beaumont arrives as noise before shape, a foot scuffs, not hobnails, but rubber breathing on wet dirt. Then his face under the helmet's rim appears, teeth a quick slash. "Your route?" Mercer asks, because you test what you can before the next thing unties you. Beaumont nods, names the village in his own round mouth. He brings back the smell of potatoes and cold wood. "Boches, 2, no, 3, by the gate near the pond," he whispers, says thick under his scarf. They try English first. They listen. He hates saying it. It makes him party to a machine that chews men he grew up with. Mercer hears the warning under his own plan, sentries primed to doubt, and a new countersign that asks for exactness. At the junction, Eddie watches seconds change shape. They widen. They feel like they have edges he could grip. The minute hand touches 12 like a blade. He imagines the password as a bridge about to swap underfoot, half his line with one boot on an old plank and one on air. He wills the set alive. It clears its throat, then dies. The quiet waits the pat of a finger on a trigger more than its safety ever could. Kane finds the brake by feel. The boot toe drops, her knee smacks brick. She bites a curse. She wedges through, cloth snagging on torn wire, and holds long enough to hear a voice that might be Mercer 2 fields off or a cow. Fog slides voices sideways. She knows she's wrong to the lane and fixes her path by smell, manure in the low ground, sweet crushed grass up the rise, diesel from the dead tractor in the pullout. She treats the route like a string she ties knots in. She unties the last one and runs. Her breath is a white ghost at her lips that would give her away if anyone is 30 feet closer. She tucks her chin and goes. Edges grab at her calves like old hands. Back near the bend, Mercer kneels and touches shoulders as he moves, a language older than rank. "On the hour we change," he says, because saying it makes men look up. The man on the right looks up, and Mercer sees how young he is. He remembers his first watch change under fire, and the way a word can be a talisman and then a trap. He almost says, "Hold the old one if you don't hear the new." He doesn't. SOP keeps 100 little exceptions from turning into a flood. He hates the faith it asks and loves the order it gives, at once, both written on his face. He stands and feels every yard of fault line along the lane. A bead lets go from hedge wire and crawls down Eddie's collar. He jerks, then laughs under his breath at himself. He taps the watch glass with a nail, any noise to touch the minute when it won't be held. Midnight leans toward them. He thinks about mouths that can't let a new vowel out clean. Tired men, cold men, foreign men. He is as afraid of being the man who asks right and does wrong after as of anything in Normandy. His canteen cup knocks the pack frame soft. It's such an American sound, domestic and circular. He files it where a night like this is survived. Tiny inventory that is not a bullet, ready for when something pretends to be. Someone down the left lane coughs and then makes it a spit. The hedgerows drink it. Beaumont shifts near Mercer, and his coat rubs in a way that's new. American wool on a French body used to different seams. Mercer hears it and adds it to the ledger. He rolls the countersign in his mouth with the Frenchman's flaw fixed and hears where he has to place his tongue so the wrong man won't die. He feels how strictness might kill in fog as fast as carelessness will, and he refuses that thought the luxury of finishing. The net barks to life long enough to mock Eddie with a burst of German singing from some neighbor net 2 counties over. It grins and dies. He stares at the speaker like it spat at his mother. He wants to pitch it into the hedge, then go in and apologize. Instead, he unclips the battery, clips it back, and sets his jaw. He will send the word by legs and lungs. The minute hand kisses 12. The hour change hums in his jaw like a bad tooth. Nora Kane rises under the lane in time to catch the watch face drag over the 12. She's still a dozen yards down, heart punching. She opens to call Mercer because the countersign needs breath before it goes bad. Something older than the war jams her teeth. Don't speak until you're in your own shadow. She claws forward, roots ripping at her cuffs. A drop needles the back of her neck. Tick, drip, far roll. 3 small sounds braided to a hinge. The lane inhales. Men glance at wristwatches, at a neighbor's, at the sky if they have none, forcing their time to lie with the gun's indifferent schedule. In that inhale, Mercer slips toward Doss because brittle spots want eyes. He draws breath to remind his forward post of the new challenge, but the rule forbids speaking it before the hour, and the hour is now. The old word turns to poison on cue. Precision buys certainty and charges for it. Midnight arrives with a soft click Eddie hears twice, once in the watch, once in his teeth. The lane cools by a hair. A cow shifts, the noise the same color as drizzle. Half the platoon has the new word in their mouths because Mercer walked it. Half waits on a headset that froze. Kane is still in the hedge with the countersign warm against her chest. Doss watches the dark like it owes him a life. Beaumont rounds where he shouldn't, and the radio hisses at nothing. The hour turns. Words on the line do not match. Fog loads the lane and chews edges off sound, and Army Doss, wedged into the T-junction where 2 sunken roads kiss, hears tread he counts in heartbeats. 10 yards. 12. He does not see knees, only a dark gathering weight, and his mouth dries as he whispers the new challenge because his luminous watch told him the old one died a minute ago. He expects the right syllables to snap back. The old countersign returns, soft, not wrong enough to hang the man, not right enough to save him. The space between his finger and the trigger shrinks to something he can't trust. Mud sucks. A boot comes loose and stops. The hedgerow holds water like a lung. A bead drops and ticks his barrel. Shapes resolve enough to be human, not enough to be known. One head cocked, listening behind him. Fog spits the old response again, like returning a coin that no longer buys bread. He hears lectures about Germans mimicking, a corporal telling them the trick is in the second syllable. The second syllable never comes. Doss moves a boot for brace. To him, it sounds like a warning shot he hasn't fired. Downline, Mercer is a shadow rearranging the platoon with hands, touch, chin flick, counting positions like beads. He knows who's awake, who almost isn't, who hung a helmet on a bayonet for shape. He heard Flores curse the radio flat and waved Kane into hedges with the new word under her palm. He felt the hour cut through standing orders like wire, leaving men who share a ditch speaking past each other by minutes and a vowel. He shifts toward the T because the noise broke there. Flores kneels over the SCR 300 as if proximity could revive it. The battery masquerades as hiss, then opts for quiet. He has the countersign on a scrap that was dry an hour ago and is now furred with damp ink feathered to a halo. He repeats it under his breath, hating how easily his own mouth crooks it when he hears thunder. He thinks to sprint the 30 yards to Doss and hold the paper out like a writ. Then the artillery growls beyond St. Lo and vibrates the lane until it eats the tail of every word he can risk. He can't push the net alive. He can't shout without putting a light on their map. He locks to the dead pack and wonders for the first time if his job is silence that keeps men living. At the T, the returning patrol peels out of the hedge. The point man lifts a hand, answer or plea, and tries the old response again, louder, as if volume could grant it life. Doss doesn't hear volume, he hears intent, the way a mimic will lean on a stolen word to cover theft. Training was a page and a speech, immediate and correct. Delay is guilt where Germans dress like you. He thinks of raids that ended in screams after a crack, rumors about a patrol that walked into throats cut because someone let almost right pass. His thumb rolls the safety off, body faster than mind. A gloved hand rises in silhouette, palm out, and the shape forms a name. Fog turns M and N into the same line. It slides vowels across the ditch. Doss hears the old countersign coughed up with a second word that could be friend or front. He expects Mercer at his shoulder, Sergeant's gravity keeping fingers from finishing something permanent, and meets only damp ivy dragging his sleeve. He hinges the rifle up another half-inch because the absence of Mercer has weight too. Mercer ducks into the inner lane that feeds the T, feet finding shallow ruts by memory. He counts Doss's breath in the cracks between the gun lines rumble and knows from its tempo that the forward post has already started a decision the platoon must live with. He sees SOP in his head, lines stiff enough to hold chaos back. He remembers a private killed for failing to get his tongue around a countersign under fire. The rule is wire. The night is smoke. He has to choose which holds and which finds the gaps. In the ditch, Henry Beaumont crouches, Sten cold in hands he's barely fired in anger, lips practicing a word that feels rounder to him than to the American mouth that taught it. He cleaned it twice in the rear while men laughed and clapped his shoulder. Now stress eats edges. French drags everything to the back of the throat. The returning patrol folded him in to skirt fields he grew up skirting. He can read German boot rhythm and hedgerows better than maps. He hears the challenge, hears the wrong answer rise from the American point man, feels the error wrap the hedge like water around rock. He knows it can drown them. Cain is a one-person wind. She slides where she counted, and the count betrays her because the fog moved walls. Landmarks flatten to silhouettes that could be a tree or a man. She pins the damp note to her ribs and rehearses the countersign timed to her steps, and each time artillery blooms. Lipless thunder, the shape shakes in her mouth. She drops over a low hedge break onto what should be a left swing into lane. It swings nowhere. A stitch hooks in her side. She follows the pain because it points in the direction that matters. At the T, a smaller detail announces itself. A short rattle, twice, metal scolding metal. Doss feels, more than hears, the round ring of a U.S. canteen cup. Not the square tin slap of German kit. Not hobnail hiss on stone. His eyes scan down and find prints the fog doesn't honor. Vibram lugs pressed in chevrons. Beside them, a smoother oval where a hobnail once bit. His throat tightens around ideas. Souvenir, shadow, a German behind an American. Certainty won't hold still. The shapes freeze at the tiny shift of his stock. The point man tries again, voice higher to clear the slop. The old countersign shoved hard enough, it turns into a question. Doss's shoulder asks whether the man is asking to live. The lane says nothing. Mercer steps into the culvert shadow and finds a slice of view. 3, maybe 4, one shorter, moving like knees ache. He raises a hand no one can see and is tempted to press it palm down to nail everything to the ground. The clock won't allow it. Their word expired. The new answer hasn't reached every mouth. Authority has to land somewhere. If it floats like fog, it gets misunderstood. Mercer tastes misidentification, how it starts at one post and uncoils like wire, making the next man more sure of fear and less sure of sound. Challenged twice, then act. Escalate on third. He knows escalation here means forcing men to show proof they can't show in fog except with a shout that brings muzzles. He moves closer and takes the hedge's complaint as the price. He sets his own mouth to the count. Whisper, order, commit. It isn't only words. Fog changes eyes. A small woman runs the hedgerow like a boy. A Frenchman rounds an English vowel into a song that looks like sarcasm but isn't. Beaumont leans forward and tries the new countersign soft first and swallows it, ashamed enough to go quiet. He tries again, shapes the second syllable as drilled, and artillery throws a low roll that eats its tail. The point man hisses to let the American speak. Beaumont folds backward into roots by men who want him invisible at the choice between accent and bullet. Doss hears the attempt, neither the old word nor the new. Between them, a vowel rolled like a marble and spat. His world shrinks to the space between front sight and a chest still a fog smear, to the stock welded into his shoulder that feels both a tool and a trap. He has one safe play. Force cadence, buy the second challenge, see if he can pry the right answer out of air. Every repetition feels like time. Since midnight, time equals guilt. His tongue clicks, looking for a consonant his ears won't trust. A boot slides, a curse rises under breath, the patrol ripples like cloth. The hedge closes its mouth. Mercer is 3 paces behind Doss now, too close to shove the barrel down without stepping into it, too far to take it out of his hands. He gives cadence anyway because he only knows one way to slow the world. Challenge again, he forms with his lips. No sound, a habit from nights of learning to make silence a weapon. Doss sees his mouth and obeys as if it carried on wind, firing the new challenge like he swallowed it to wet it. They still throw back the old answer. This time louder, sharper with frustration, dragged with a name. Mercer! The use almost saves it. It almost paints a face, almost makes identity work beyond a syllable. Mercer's fist tightens at his name, used like a password. It's wrong and also the most human thing on the lane. He can't accept it without making chaos a rule. He can't refuse it without teaching that rules matter more than men. He chooses the middle. He steps out into the lane where both sides can see him and shoot him if they're going to. In that second, a small thing tells truth. The cup rattles again against webbing, that domestic clink Americans have been dragging through barns and lanes since basic. It cuts through the artillery's tail. Doubts drop in Doss's gut, then one sticks. A faint tap on stone, too fine for anything but a hobnail kissing grit, a shadow behind a shadow. The lane holds both truths and offers neither all the way. Doss splits the difference and aims at space between 2 chests, the safest place if he has to fire, the worst if he's wrong. The returning patrol sees a figure step out, notes the slope of Mercer's shoulders even in silhouette. Their leader drops his weapon half an inch. He starts to say the countersign they should have used 10 minutes ago and gets 2 letters out before a hand disappears to a hip beside him and metal flashes and Doss can't tell if it's a canteen or a grenade. He feels his finger curl because he refuses to be the man who hesitated. The night shadows said, please. Another thread pulls into the lane, a single body climbing hedge whispering around it. Kane's breath hums in the fog, building, falling, too far, too muffled, not yet a word. Mercer hears the not silence and knows what it likely is, and knows also it can be anything else. He doesn't gamble aloud. He lifts his hand chest high, palm out. Stop. The point man tenses, thinks, holds. Doss's finger finds its pad, where a cigarette might sit on another kind of night. Beaumont's lungs burn with humiliation that sits just under anger. He is here to show them where to put their feet. Now his mouth is a liability. The idea that his vowel could kill a man with the right uniform lodges like a pit in his throat. He tries again, clamps the syllable down flat, and the fog smooths it further. Doss hears something like it, and unlike it, and adrenaline pushes decisions that don't feel like they belong to him. Mercer uses the last lever. Double challenge, he whispers, letting his voice exist. The word makes it halfway before a distant ripple rolls over it. Doss hears enough. He calls it again, louder. If he dies for noise, it will be for clarity. The shapes ahead flinch. The answer leaps back quick because fear makes recall faster. The wrong countersign, the one printed on a slip in their pocket that stopped being a key at midnight. It lands with bad taste. A heel rips a piece of lane and shows it the old way, a perfect GI lug, and nearby the ghost of a hobnail circle. The print lies like evidence never fully trustworthy. Doss's mind grabs wrong, then right, then wrong again. Maybe the German isn't ahead, but to the side, wearing help's outline. Maybe the fog itself is lying, making every man sound like a thief. Flores hears none of it, and all of it. Silence from the set goes heavy as guilt. He has an older second battery under his flap, heavy, temperamental. He could swap, spark, risk a squeal that flares their position. He chooses not to because the lane already has noise. He presses the damp paper flat on his leg, and the letters refuse to sharpen. He shuts his eyes and says the words in his skull and learns that heads are not radios. Kane hits the lane with a shoulder that glances off Hedge and a splinter claiming her palm. She doesn't stop. Her breath arrives first, a scout that comes back with the smell of oil, damp wool, and a thread of fear turning toward anger. She wants to shout the countersign like fire, but the first answer will be a bullet testing her vowel. She bargains with sound by degrees, just enough to announce human, not enough to put a shape on it, and wills Mercer's head to swivel. Far off, a flare paints the cloud's belly lime, gives faces the high, hard look of masks, and in that blink she sees a mouth, Beaumont's, shaping the new word with a second syllable that falls away like a foot missing a curb. Close enough to spark hope, far enough to snuff it. Doss draws air through teeth, his own count. He hasn't been told to shoot, or told not to. He knows how long a match can hover over kerosene. His thumb tightens on a safety that's already down. Mercer takes breath to commit to the choice he hates less when the point man throws the wrong response one more time, like he's teaching the night to talk. The click that follows is naked as bone. Doss's safety. It was down, confirmed by a thumb that needed to do anything when language would not. Fog beads on nettles, a blind white that swallows sight-posts, and the 10 yards between black shapes stretches and snaps, smaller with each beat. Doss shifts off a route, and the reflex runs down the line, stocks tucked tight, shoulders braced for a shot a second from existing. The new challenge sands to grit in his mouth. The dead countersign rings like a ghost in his ear. He convinces himself ghosts fire back if you hesitate. Mercer feels wire draw taut between posts he can't see and hears, inside one wrong syllable, an argument with time. His watch glows soft under his sleeve, fogging with each check, the hour hand a rebuke. The deadline turned to law will not care about fog. Mud creeps under his boots. He kills the urge to slide into the skylined madness of the T. He can't see Doss. He knows where he is by the absence of bird noise and the wet leather creak of a hand choking a stock. Flores presses a knuckle to his temple and listens to a dead ocean. The SCR 300 sits like a sleeping animal that refuses. Wet foliage whispers in the set, identical to hedges whispering outside. The battery under canvas is tomb cold. He scrubs the dial across dead bands like a thief trying windows, hunting for any neighbor net scrape. Thunder answers like a malcontent god. In his pocket, the scrap Mercer gave him is smudged dark where rain bled pencil. The last syllable thins under his thumb. Henry Beaumont curls himself into the hedge's rootwork and traps his tongue behind his teeth. The vowel sits like a round marble he kneads flat. Fog clings to his lips, makes them slur. He taught himself these words walking. His English unknits under stress into his mother's sounds. He has walked with Germans in this lane once, a different night, heart a fist, mispronouncing a name by a hair. He survived his mistake by inches. He can feel tonight's mistake plucked already, a string still humming. The patrol is 5 shapes in file, the second man's mess tin knocking his belt with a dull ring. Doss trained his ear to tag as enemy. Inside it is a second sound, a thin chain tap of a canteen cap, domestic noise, kitchen ghost. They hold as the challenge hits, and the wrong countersign leaps from the point man's throat like a sneeze he can't abort. Once it's alive, something else has to die. Doss takes slack out of the trigger. 3. He thinks it because Mercer put it there. 1, 2, commit. He wants to be praised for the clean hold at the threshold. The fog makes everything soft. Buttons, resolve. He starts the count under breath. 1, and his voice cracks so it sounds like someone else's throat has his. Mercer hears his own order coming back like something he put into the world and now wishes away. He leans forward, hands open to the dark like he could shape air into better words. Double challenge buys a heartbeat, he taught them. Nothing more. He wants credit and time. He gives cadence, voice snapped by use, the sound of a man who has been listened to before and had it matter. Challenge again, he calls, steadier than the ground. The fog swallows the word and spits something back as if the hedge itself spoke. A mule cries someplace, ugly and honest. A flare ghosts the clouds again and fails to find them. The answer is almost right. Almost as useless after the hour. Almost as camouflage. Henry lifts his chin and lays the vowel flat. The difference is shaving thin, the shift between A and Ah, between his father's patience and a teacher's ruler. He hears himself get it wrong and knows he can't catch it mid-air. He hears the safety confirmed certain. He should repeat instantly. He doesn't, because fear robs him of anything extra. Eddie's set thumps his knee as he shifts. From the lane, a thin chime of metal on metal threads through. Not the flat slap of German tin, not the clack of square canteens. It is the round ring of the GI cup at a canteen bale. He has eaten to that pitch. The sound bounces off bone, and he opens his mouth to warn, but training trims his voice, and thunder eats it. Boots push mud, their prints lie about allegiance. Mercer knows patterns like prayers. He taught men to check ground first. He edges off line, lowers his head, pinches his light so it throws a stingy smear. In it, chevrons by GI Vibram, a softer oval thawed by French shoe soles, and beyond, at a hedge break, the fresh coin of a hobnail leading off and back, angling south. The enemy has been here, maybe is still here. The mud speaks 3 languages at once, and none with complete truth. The trap catches not only trigger fingers, but thinking. A German can copy a word. They can hang a GI cup and rattle it. They can tramp their boots blurry. Since midnight, imagination turns fog into a factory of bad stories. Mercer chooses which ghost to believe. He refuses to anchor on Beaumont's accent and lets the cup's note sit like a home pitch in discord. 2, Doss breathes, drip hanging off a leaf. He finds the wall of his trigger and holds it. He knows where the break lives, practiced at range, once up close, never like this. The wrong answer is wait. The near right is a needle. A third beat risks the first shot coming the other way, no matter what he believes the cup says. Henry's chest knots. He is not a man who forgets a vowel for free. He drags fog in, pushes it through his teeth to make an American flatness. He thinks of boys he took through an orchard, and their surprise at apples they could not see, their kind mangling of his language. He thinks of tuition paid in bruised shins and a thumb sliced to bone on wire. He shapes the syllable again in his head and swears he won't let his father's tongue kill a friend. Flores slips the headset off and lets it hang like a strip of webbing from his knee. He crawls on elbows. the radio a sullen partner he must coax. Mud climbs his sleeves. He presses his face to hedge to see no better, and crushes the damp note until pulp squeezes and letters give and stain his fingers. He didn't watch the patrol go out. He didn't count them. He is a pair of ears and a man-shaped worry that the only tool he carries has chosen to be a rock. At the T, someone inhales through a hole in a tooth. Small sounds grow large. Big choices shrink inside them. On it rides whether Doss jumps to 3 because he refuses to be a fool. On it rides whether the point man overcorrects into a stagey American that rings false. On it rides whether the next gun roll erases one more syllable they need. Mercer's mouth moves before he commits. "Hold," he says, a word with no authority against a crack, but a word he throws anyway, because sometimes a man needs to hear you want his finger where it is. His hands are out, and there is no one to see them. He wants another second, and has to buy it with his own fear. He chews the SOP he hammered at dusk. After the hour, the old word is poison. If unsure, challenge twice. He knows Doss is past it, in the shadow between two rules where a man steps with his own feet and pays later. The point man is a Pennsylvanian who hasn't slept in 4 nights. He has been thinking of his mother's kitchen, not for comfort, but because people talk too loud over soup. He never learned to listen in layers. He opens his mouth to throw the new word because he knows it. They all do. They were briefed. They turned late. His brain keeps serving the old one like a bad chorus. He claws the right word at last and blasts it forward to shatter fog. The fog eats it. Men at the T hear something like it. Something like can kill quicker than wrong. The save is small and mechanical. The cup swings as the point man inhales and rings off tempo in a way that doesn't live on German belts. It's a bell rung by fatigue. It cuts through Beaumont's rounded tries and thunder. Doss catches it because he is wound tight enough to hear blood and disciplined enough to listen for the right song. Not certainty. An arm tug off the jump. Beaumont hears it and, for the first time tonight, his foreignness slips. He has watched these boys scour cups with sand, has laughed at the way their metal sings. He held one in a farmhouse and decided the future could fit inside its steam. He places the taste of the cup against the taste of the word and finds they share a root. He lays his tongue flat as a blade and cuts the vowel clean, as the lieutenant with a clenched cigarette taught, not as his village priest would sing. The difference lands like a coin. It has weight. It is exact. Doss's muscles argue with the momentum of his early count. 3 lives in his blood. The right countersign sits opposite, a brass weight of its own. If uncertain, challenge twice. He has. He isn't now. His body wants the ritual anyway. "Hold," Mercer calls because he hears Beaumont correct. The knight opens an eye and listens. He can't reach Doss with a hand. He throws his voice and hopes it has ballast. For a beat, bridles catch before they snap. The platoon balances on the pad of Doss's finger. Flores finally lets his relief leak, ugly and quiet, and locks it down. He wants to belt the countersign to flood the lane, to prove he knows it, but you don't drown a challenge. You drown the one voice that matters. He squeezes the note until it squashes, the letters bleeding into his skin, a small ruin that feels like penance for a radio he can't save tonight. The second man in the file shifts, and the mess tin taps once more, a heartbeat in aluminum. He feels eyes in the fog pull at him and thinks about melting back into the hedge, looping wide, throwing himself flat, and letting physics decide. The lane is a funnel, sideways sticks. Back leads to patrol routes they mapped earlier, hedges that bite. Forward is truth if truth gets recognized in time. Henry fights the urge to say the word again for his own sake. The rule is simple. Give it once, clean. Repeat only when asked. Too many times turns into pleading, pleading into fear, fear into the sound of Germans trying to be American. He clamps his jaw, holds the new flatness ready, presses his tongue to his teeth like a coin. Doss's barrel draws a line from his shoulder to Beaumont's chest. He can place the sternum without seeing a face. Fog beads on web straps and sleeves. In that moisture lives this night. Good men in bad light. Rules trying to make math out of air. The cup's ring fades. The right vowel's echo thins. 3 still waits. Ritual likes to end in violence. Mercer breaks ritual because ritual is a luxury. He welds cadence to command. Double challenge, he snaps louder so the cut goes straight. Last time. Manuals don't say last time. Men do. He gives Doss permission to choose and to call it an order. One more shot to force the truth forward. Henri doesn't think of men he's seen die for less. He gives the countersign flat and leans into the American vowel until he feels a new shape in his throat. He gives it, then quiet takes its outline. The far battery speaks. 3 hedges away, a round lands with a subtraction of air that clears hearing for a beat. In that clean bit, behind Mercer, a lighter pings shut. Behind Doss, a heel sucks out of mud, friend mud that lets go. Flores cocks his head and hunts the rabbit detail that will let Doss ease his finger or finish his count. He hears it, the quick 2-tap of a man patting where his dog tags hang, that hollow little silver whisper a GI's chest knows by muscle. Words can be stolen, cups can be hung, but you don't remember to pat your tags in the first 3 seconds of fear unless you've worn them until a white line shows under the chain. The tap is a ritual. It's theirs. The chain whisper is tiny. It could die under even that smaller thunder. It slips into Doss's ear like a prayer he didn't know he knew. It opens his lungs. He doesn't fly off the trigger. He melts off the wall. He doesn't drop the muzzle. Never. He lives the hatred out of it. He inhales. He inventories without words. He waits for Mercer to find the decision he already made. Kane breaks into the lane like a blade through wool, berries tearing her sleeves, breath-tearing air. She hits hardpack, boot slips, catches a bank, hand to the stitch that feels like a knife, hair pasted to her forehead. Her mouth is full of countersign and blood taste and 3 gaps she miscounted. The apology won't fit. She throws the corrected countersign ahead like a flare, flat and taut, and too loud to be anything else. She sees Doss's muzzle, hard little circle, and hears his 2 in her head. She hopes she isn't a heartbeat too late. She doesn't slow. Her breath scrapes her throat, fog cool in her mouth, boots skidding in churn where the lane pinches the tee. The scrap is in her fist, damp as skin, ink along one edge gone bruise. She doesn't look. The word sits like a seed under her tongue. She takes the last yards on her hands and toes, the world narrowing to Doss's sight post and the pale smear of his face. Henri saves the first syllable by stepping in from the hedge like a man who walked into a wrong parlor, palms up, helmet brim low. He has practice from the rear, where men smiled and called him close. He bites the vowel this time and still rounds the last breath. "Schon," he says, softening a thing that shouldn't be soft. Doss's arms tighten. Somewhere in Beaumont's cheekbone, a muscle flinches at a click he thinks he hears. Mercer borrows his own discipline and shoves it back down the lane. "Double challenge," he says through molars, low and sharp, so the men closest cut it clean. Again. The only insurance left, muscle memory when the brain fills. Eddie's radio rides his spine, cold and stubborn. He wants to talk into it anyway, to hear himself say a word to nobody. He tracks Doss's breath turning into numbers. He's heard those breaths when Doss lit his next cigarette with the last one. Eddie's fingers dig into bakelight. He steps out far enough to catch the wet gleam of a watch face, the fog holding a rifle barrel like a gentler thing than it is. 1, Doss swallows. The front sight slides from breastbone to the notch at the throat, his thumb finding the safety's dead travel. He doesn't think of Germans. He thinks of ghosts in flares and doubtful faces when the light died. A round ring cuts through his count. It doesn't belong on a German belt. It belongs in a mess line. It bumps his count off one. Beaumont hears it too, the American rattle he learned sitting in ditches. He corrects himself not off English, but off the sound. He flattens the vowel. Son, and the word is awkward, and right at once. He stops. Right words on the wrong beat can still kill. Kane chews the last 2 yards, rises into Doss's eyes. Her own canteen kisses her buckle, and she lets it. Another flag. Her throat is a raw place she must push through. She gives the countersign clean once, then again, because Mercer taught her to build a wall out of repetition when the world turns. 2. Doss's shoulder settles, the muzzle's wobble narrows to a breath. Hands accept they may be empty a heartbeat from now. He lifts the shot into a space where, if it goes, it will go through no one's heart. Kane's mouth opens. The drizzle takes edges. It shouldn't, and folds them back. Mercer moves into his own field of fire because there's no other leverage. Hold, he says, tossing the syllable like a wedge between steel and bone. Eastward, the guns let a long train go into a tunnel and wipe the fragile middle out of Kane's word. For a beat, they hear nothing but the world reminding them other men are dying. Eddie hears something else, mud kissing a soul. That's not iron on stone. Hobnails throw a little rain. This is rubber grip and release. His pinched light shows the ground a stingy patch, Vibram chevrons planted over a round hobnail smear, as if one step chased another's shadow. Beaumont says nothing. He angles his body so his resistance armband's violet peaks between cane and leaf. Color won't save him. The cup will. It rings again as Kane shifts. Kane swallows the third beat like she wants to bite it. Doss is going to say 3. And she nails the countersign one more time in a voice that belongs to the platoon. The vowel hard and square, the way Flores said it in her ear. Not Beaumont's roundness, not fatigue's smear. It lands like a bone. Doss hears the shape like the click of a safety going back on. It sits in the notch and locks. He stops adding weight to the trigger. He lets weight leave. He sidesteps crabwise so the barrel points into weeds rather than through cane. The breath he's been counting shakes loose. The returning patrol, 5 men trying to thread themselves through hedges without tying a knot, lift their hands without meaning to. The second man wears a German canteen, ditch salvage, and it clinks an oval note that snaps Doss's head, but doesn't undo the bigger thing. The right answer sits there, large enough to choke out infiltrator. Mercer stands with palms up like he's holding a table the rest are leaning on. Pass it, he says to Kane, voice hardly bigger than breath. He means the word. He means the test. He means the count. She steps to the next post, a mouth she can't see waiting for something it can count on. She gives it once, then twice, then a third time, because belief in only 2 is thin now. Eddie peels the scrap from her fist because she's forgotten she still has it, because he wants to see the thing that didn't save him when the net died. The ink has wept to 1 dark vowel and 2 unknowns. He runs his thumb down the smear and leaves a clean stripe where paper dried under her palm. He thinks of the second hand stepping into midnight and making all old things dangerous. He folds the scrap like it can be coaxed back with care. Beaumont lets air out slow. He had been holding himself like a man ready to sneeze in church. He watches Doss's rifle yaw a hair and settle like a bird deciding where to land. Merci, he breathes, the only word safe in his mouth. He touches his chest where his syllable went wrong and doesn't ask to try again. He is relieved he doesn't have to. Fog dislikes consonants, but tonight it carries this vowel true enough down the line. It moves post to post like a polished stone passed hand to hand. Ohio's flat, New York's clipped, a Southerner's stretched, and the bones of it hold. If failure comes now, it has to be malice, not confusion. The line is 15 small lines, each with its own humidity, mood, rise, and fall. Every little hump of ground changes how sound lies. Each time the word jumps that hump, it lands in a mouth with a story about last night. Germans with right words and wrong mouths, a corporal killed by a vowel. They have been told to imagine the enemy 3 feet away and breathe accordingly. They do. Breathing becomes a risk. Mercer slows after 5 men have the new shape. He lets himself look at Doss and nods like agreeing to something neither wants to say. SOP stands, he says. Not apology, but apology lives in it like smoke in clothes. Doss nods. His next breath is softer. He touches Kane's cup with his eyes like it's a charm. At the far end of the lane, the hedge lifts to show a rectangle of sky. A flare blooms in the next grid, careless art, and makes their faces lime for a fragment. Mercer's jaw, Doss's tendons, Eddie's narrow hands, Kane's chapped mouth, Beaumont's cheekbone. The whole night is theater for an instant. Then the flare fades off to the right and takes its attention. The 5 return into the lane center, brushing men who just decided not to kill them. The second man grins before he knows he did and raises the German canteen like a show and tell. Don't worry, he says. Someone behind him laughs small and too bright because relief always looks a little hysterical. The canteen kisses Kane's cup like a toast. Eddie coaxes one more change out of the set. He hasn't touched it since he learned touching makes things die. He taps the casing with 2 knuckles. The push-to-talk squeaks. His own breath comes back unmolested by anything but canvas. The net is still down. The antenna is a tired bird in brush. His mouth still works. Kane moves 2 posts down and does it again. At 1, a man throws her the word wrong on purpose to see if she will catch it, fear disguised as a test. She makes him say it right and nods when he does. She doesn't tell him his mistake was thinking the test was for her. She thumbs her cup so it rattles. The sound is something his grandmother would recognize. They let that be enough. Mercer's watch ticks its little radium heart into wet air. He lifts it enough to see the minute creep. Midnight is behind them, like a scar. He keeps measuring because habits yank. Glass fogs on his breath as he lets out the sigh he held for 4 minutes and change. The second hand slides and doesn't collect a life. 2 fields over, a cow shifts. A fence post shoulders a bird. Hedges drip in patient beads, cutting the land into careful packages of distance. Here, the line behaves as one thing, not by desire, but necessity. Kane's word keeps running, obedient, clean. Men catch it and pour it forward. Mercer looks left where Beaumont waits, and then south where the hobnail trace angled. He tips 2 fingers toward the hedge cut that leads to the dairy, and then beyond it to the pond gate. Beaumont touches his armband through his sleeve and nods to lead. Eddie palming the ruined slip, Kane wiping ink and rain from her lips, Doss keeping his muzzle up but its hatred gone. All of them hear the next small thing. It is not a word. It is water ticking off wire, watch glass fogging under a thumb, a cup giving 1 round note as Mercer gestures them forward into the next gap.